Future Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, today we are in a battle. It is going to be the Trojans versus the Greeks. Now today we're going to be looking at a game that is based off a poem called Iliad, which essentially was this battle. And this is designed by the Dr. Reiner Knizia, the one and only, and one of my favorite designers. So this is a two-player only game. Let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. In Iliad, you're trying to have the most points by winning these different tiles. However, there's twists like normal Knizia scoring. There's 5 different types of gods as shown here, different colors. They show gods on there. If you have at least 5 gods and the other player does not, you automatically win regardless of score. If both of you have 5 gods, or if neither of you have all 5 gods, then it doesn't matter. Then you just add up the points and that's who's going to win. Now, if you're short a god, but you get 2 of these rings for marriage, that takes place as 1 god. So if I only had these 4, but I also had these 2 at the end, well, I still have all 5 gods. And again, that could be an immediate victory in the end. Some of them are negative, some of them like this, some of them are just positive points. Also at the end, if you have like all 5 gods, but you have multiples of a god, you only score the top one. So this 2 doesn't really even do you any good there. So that's the big twist in scoring, getting the 5 gods, trying to stop the other player from getting them, but if so, you're trying to have the most points. Now here's how it might look like at the beginning. All of those tiles, the gods and all of them, are randomly placed here with 5 out here randomly as well. And there's 2 red and 2 blue random spots on the board. And over the course of the game, you start your hand with 2 tiles that you can see. On your turn, you're simply going to place a tile. And you must place it on your color, so a red one has to go on a red, and it has to be adjacent to at least 1 tile out there, so like this. Some of them don't have any abilities, like the 5, because that's really important. Now, why do they have numbers? Because once a row or column is finished, you'll add up all the numbers for red, add up all the numbers for blue. Whoever has the most will get the first choice of either of the 2. Like this one's a +10, that one's a 7, but it's a god, so maybe early in the game, if this row is filled up and you got it, you might want this one. Even though it's 3 less points, you're 1/5 of the way to at least making sure you don't lose, because you remember you need at least 1 of each 5 gods if the other player doesn't has them. Now other tiles, would be the blue player's turn. Now you play a tile, then draw a tile, so you always have 2 to choose from. This one says, hey, move one of your tiles somewhere else, and it has to be like a legal placement. So maybe you'd go something like this, and then maybe you would move it down here, for example. Why would you do that? Well, maybe you want to focus on this row as opposed to this row. Well, maybe the blue now goes here, and this allows them to move a red one. So maybe they could take this, and maybe they move it down here because maybe they want to fight for this row, or they don't care about this column, whatever. But you're moving things around, always in looking at what you're possibly, might be winning. Sometimes you'll place this one, and this one is always the strength of all the opponents next to it. So right now, this one would be worth a 6, and it's going to be worth a 6 in a lot. So you want to put that right in the middle of a bunch of powerful things. Which is why sometimes you might go here with a 4. This says you flip this tile over and an adjacent opponent. Maybe you do something like this because you don't want them to have all those extra points there. So maybe in your turn you play this one. Now, what does this one let you do? I'll tell you later. But the abilities are always optional. So here we look at this row because it's complete, or this column. Blue has 7. Red has 7. If it's tied, the player that played gets it. So this player gets to pick first choice, either this one or this one. This is great because it's a 10-point swing. They're going to take this, just 5 points, and one of the 5 gods you need. The other player's going to take the -5. And the other player's turn. That's pretty much how it works. Now, what does this do? This allows you to swap one that you've already gotten, like maybe a -1, with one that's already here, like that. And these 5 are seated at the beginning of the game, making sure there's no negatives there. And the game will end once all the tiles have been played, and then you score as I showed at the beginning of the game. Whoever has the most is the winner. All right, coming into this, let me share my sort of feelings and biases. I love tight 2-player games. Knizia is one of my favorite designers, maybe my second favorite designer. He's starting to encroach a little bit on Mr. Cathala there, my favorite designer. And so I tend to play a lot of his games. I don't like everything I play. He tends to be a mixed bag. He does so many games that, and some of his games tend to be like, slight modifications of other games. But when I look at his body of work, handfuls of my favorite games are from him, and generally speaking, I like his games at the very least. Sometimes they hit or miss, sometimes they're just like, this feels like this, but with one little twist. But overall, he's amazing. So this is a classic Knizia example of super Simple mechanisms, tons of depth. He is just a master at hiding all of the magic of a game behind what is simple mechanisms. This game, you are placing a tile, drawing a tile. Maybe, most of the time you will be using it, using a special action. Not crazy actions. I'm going to swap a tile. I'm going to move a tile. I'm going to flip a tile. Like, mechanisms-wise, this game is so light. But how he has done the math, because he's a doctor in mathematics, and how he has figured out all of the random elements here that play, like the variable setup and such, it's just a master. It's such an easy game to play. Play a tile, probably do the ability, draw a tile next turn. But the decision space and the agonizing decisions you have from all of these are just Knizia-esque, I would say. I like that you're placing a tile and that you may be enacting ability. Sometimes you won't want to. Sometimes you don't want to flip the tile over next to it or something like that. Flip that tile over and flip a tile over next to it. Sometimes you won't want to swap it with a tile, things like that. But the fact that you can do that is cool. I like that you're fighting flow influence. I mean, this is a knife fight in a phone booth. You're constantly fighting against what the other player is doing. You're looking at the beginning of the game, how many points, the different tiles you might be getting. The spread is really what's most important. If you're getting a -10 and he's getting a -5, well, you're gaining 5 points on that. But if it's a +10 and a -10, it's a 20 point swing. That column is going to be more heavily fought over. I love, Knizia is just a mastermind in always having like some type of twist in the scoring. This has that too, where you have to have one of all 5 gods to win, assuming the other player does. And that's just brilliant, because it's like, if neither player gets it, I still have not seen that happen, then you just go to points. If both players get it, which often happens most of the time, both players win. But if one of them gets it and the other one doesn't, the other player loses. That's just such a tension-filled, and it drives everything. That one little twist in the scoring just changes the entire game up, where you're constantly looking at things, and you're constantly changing. Another thing I like is you're giving up more points for stopping those 5 gods. So it's like, sometimes I'll be like, you know what? You can have the +10. I need this 4 tile, because if I don't get it, this is the last one of that sort of yellowish oranges tile. I don't have one yet. So it just makes it so interesting there. It's all your choices are influenced by that. I love that you're doing that. Stopping someone from getting the 5th god tile, taking something that's less, because you know that you're going to stop them, and they're not going to be able to win. Maybe they'll be able to swap on with the side, but now you want to make sure that you take some of those away. It's so much strategy here for how light the game is, but man, tactically it's heavy. I love the timing of, you're always thinking about the timing of where to play when. I mean, you show your hand too early, well, that time might get moved, it might get flipped over. So you're kind of trying to now granted, you only have 2 tiles to choose from, but to your best ability, you're trying to fill out the grid, feel out your opponent, and then try to be the hammer to the nail and close out a column or a row when you know you're getting the ones you want. Because if you play your tiles too early, too good, they can be manipulated, move around. So the timing of what to play when is huge. You're constantly prioritizing and reprioritizing things throughout the entire game. Again, based on how many gods do I have, how many gods do they have, how many are left, what does the board makeup look like, what does it now look like, this tile was moved over here, now what should I do? You're constantly just recalculating everything, and it makes your brain feel good, or made mine feel good. I like that you're playing tiles now for the lead, or you're waiting a little bit, again, waiting towards the very end so that hopefully they don't have enough chance to kind of move it around and such. The game is absolutely fantastic. All right, is there anything negative about this? Well, no game's perfect, but this one's pretty close. Only negative thing I could say is sometimes when one of your tiles get flipped down, maybe earlier in the game, and you're getting towards the end, you're like, are all my 3s out already? Am I going to be able to swap one of my other tiles for that god I need? And there's a little bit of a memory element there. That's the only part I don't like. Obviously, you can just remove that element out and just say, you can look at your own flip down tiles anytime you want. They're mainly flip down so they don't score, right? Now, flip down tiles can still move and stuff like that as well, but that's my only minor nitpick. This game is really fantastic. If you now I'm not usually a huge fan of abstract games. This has enough sort of randomized elements into it that I really like it. So I don't often, I'm very rarely keeping games in my gaming library because it's so full, and if I keep one, I gotta get rid of one, and that's always a tough decision. But this game is so impressive that it is gaining a spot in my gaming library. My 2-player section's way over full. And so what that means, I gotta get rid of one that's gonna be tough. So with that being said, to induct it into my gaming library, we're gonna give it a saxophone serenade. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and they just launched their 4.5 Kickstarter, which will introduce the new Galactic, Mycroft, and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. Search for Game Toppers on Kickstarter or go to GameToppersLLC.com.